Of, okay, someone's bought into wanting to understand their values a bit more clearer. How would someone go about this? Is this like a one-time exercise they do, or is this over a very long period of time that they're doing this discovery process?
Yeah. So it starts with a one-time exercise. What I've seen to work best is something that's pretty accessible to most people. You can Google a list of values. That can be a great starting point. I'll forewarn you, they're usually pretty exhaustive. There are a lot of values. I think you mentioned that, Gabe, at the start. So it's a lot to start with. But what I do is I have my athletes, my clients go through kind of a process of elimination. So we have this big list of, oh my gosh, all of these things hold value, but how do I know what actually is valuable to me? I have athletes go through and just mark every single one that they feel the least bit connected to. Unfortunately, that only narrows it down by about 10%. It is still a very large list. But then we move into a second process of narrowing down, which is which of these do I really want to prioritize? When I think about all the different roles that I have, all the different identities that I have, which of these are really important? Not just connecting, but these are important to me. Maybe star those. We see that tick it down a little bit more. And then we move to another level where we go in 10 years, in 5 years, the person I want to be, what kinds of values would they hold? And that helps us narrow it down even more. Another process you can go through to narrow down is to think, what are some tangible things that I could see myself doing for these values? So, again, if it's resilience, if it's relationships, if it's self discipline, can I think of tangible things that I can do to grow that in my role as athlete, in my role as student, and ticking those down? And usually by going through this process, we see it come down to around 5, maybe 10, and that's a pretty manageable list. If we want to narrow it down further, it can also help to think which of these are just important to me, not my parents, not my coaches, not my teachers, but just me, innately important to me. And all of those different steps can kind of get us down to a really solid list of, I would say, around 5 or 10, and that's a good list of core values we can work with.
So that's the one-time exercise that you start the values discovery process.
Mhm.
And when you ask an athlete to ask themselves, what is innately important to me from these values, the way I kind of think of it as is how do I naturally act in
Mhm.
alignment with what values and what can provide minimal tension in my decision making and actions. Does that sound right?
Oh, yeah, that's a great way to put it, and I think that can help us kind of reflect too. We think back on times where you just felt really, I mean, I'll use your word, you didn't feel any tension. You felt like you were in flow in whatever experience that was. What was going on? Was it the prioritization of relationships? Was it the prioritization of resiliency? Like, figuring out in past experiences of tension and in past experiences of no tension, total flow, what was going on there? I think that's a great way to go about it too.
So when we talk about part of this values discovery is the one-time exercise that you just laid out, but it also happens over a period of time.
Mhm.
Where my mind goes is doing a type of journaling after practices and games and writing down maybe how you felt and how that connected to any values if necessary. And you can also do this maybe proactively. So going into a practice or a game with the idea of, I'm going to be curious today about what's going well throughout practice. If something doesn't go well, I'm going to try and attack that with a lens of curiosity, not negativity. So that seems like something that you would do many times throughout a whole season to really discover what values are leading to your best performances or minimal tension. Is there anything you want to add to that process or any other ideas you have how an athlete learns their values over a long period of time?
No, I think that hits it right on. I think to some extent we kind of already know our values. I think, when I ask people what's important to them, we might have to ask it in a few different ways to really get to what those values are. The list is great because it's just like from the get go, we're starting square one, what's important to you. But I think between the process of reflecting, narrowing down this list, doing your approach of let's just look at a season, like what comes up, what is helpful, what's unhelpful. I think all of those are great ways to really grow that awareness and kind of get us, like I said, to first base of what even are my values.
Another thing I just remembered on how to continuously do this values practice over a long period of time is the rock that we learned about together, where you tape a word or write a word on a rock and just put it on your desk. And that can easily be one of your values. And you have a constant reminder every time you look at it to ask yourself, am I living my life right now in accordance with this value? And if not, how can I change that?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's such a great tangible tool. And to add to that, because like I said, we're at the start. We know these values, but I think to your point of having a visual reminder is one of the best things that we can do. I've had a client who on her soccer bag, she put a ribbon, and on that ribbon wrote an acronym for the 5 values that she wants to prioritize every day. So every day at practice, every game that she has, she's being reminded of, yeah, this is why I'm doing it, is these values. How do I want to display them today? And then I think just for our listeners who are probably like, I really want something so tangible. How do I track that I'm actually doing my values? Get numerical with it. I think it's great to journal it out and talk about how it went, how it felt, what kind of tension you felt if you weren't practicing it. But if you need something like, all right, out of 5 stars, how did I do on the value of curiosity today? How did I do on the value of resiliency today? Give yourself a score, right? Because this is going to be a process that there's not an end game. You're not going to get to a point and go, I have mastered resiliency. It's probably a lifelong process. So get comfortable with some days being 3 stars, some days being 5 stars, and kind of loving the process of it.